2 months ago, I installed Starlink. There was a massive difference between the speed test results recorded on Starlink and the speed tests on my home network that it was connected to. So I decided it was time to sort this out, particularly given so many of you have sent me such wonderful comments and suggestions as to how I could fix it. But I'm no Wi-Fi expert, so hopefully the steps that I'm outlining today will give you a little bit of confidence if you're in a similar situation needing to fix your own Wi-Fi network. So today we've got a Starlink update, we've got the steps that I've gone through to fix my network. I'm going to quickly run through how I recently got very close to having my channel hacked and taken down, which is why I'm pleased to have updated my internet security with Surfshark, the sponsors of today's video. Things I do for you guys. A bit scared, can I get down now? Now what was a bit frustrating was immediately before I posted the video, pretty much as it was uploading, Starlink pulled the £99 deal that they had running on the hardware, which is what I was able to take advantage of when I bought this kit. So sorry to anyone out there who was disappointed after watching my vid when they checked on the prices online. Anyway, a few quick points to run through that came out of the video. Now a few of you said I shouldn't have used these fixings to fix what is quite a heavy pole to the chimney, and instead should have gone with a lashing kit like this. Well, it is a fair point. In my case though, I took the view the chimney is substantial, the brickwork's in good condition, and a few brackets isn't going to in any way destabilise it, but point taken. Somebody else pointed out I hadn't tethered the cable to the pole with zip ties, which obviously I have now done. What I haven't quite done yet is got round to properly tethering the cable to the wall. Remember in my vid me pointing out that the big flaw of the router is there are no RJ45 networking ports. With Starlink notoriously slow to deliver things like this, I bought this Ethernet adapter on Amazon, and you've guessed it, it was faulty. I had this happening a lot, which was not fun and very frustrating. Somebody had obviously bought a faulty adapter and decided to flog it on Amazon. So that went back and I bought this one from Starlink, and that problem has since been resolved. And then the other day when I was trying to edit this video, the screen of death came back for what seemed like an entire afternoon. I ended up doing a factory reset, and when that didn't work, found out eventually through Starlink customer support, which you can get through the app and email, you can't speak to them direct, that there was a software update at the time. The app didn't tell me that it was disconnected for that reason, which is annoying because I wasted an entire afternoon sorting it out, but I did eventually get it back up and running. Now in my Starlink install vid, for some reason I didn't mention the monthly residential package I'm on, which is £75, £40 more expensive than my EE 5G router, and that contract has still got another 6 months to run, which is an absolute disaster. Anyway, the point is the EE router was hopeless. Starlink is brilliant, happy house at the moment, all the streaming services are running well, and my YouTube videos are uploading well, particularly since all my networking issues have been fixed, as I'll be talking about later on in today's vid. So Starlink has brought our internet back with a vengeance, and if any of you out there are similarly considering it because of your internet problems, then from my point of view it has a big thumbs up. But with that new connectivity, I was painfully reminded recently of the bad actors out there who are continuously trying to inflict evil on our lives. In my case, I clicked on a link in an email apparently from YouTube saying I needed to agree to their new monetization terms. And another one pinged through just this afternoon. A classic way to get your computer hacked, and pretty similar to two recent high-profile attacks on two big and ironically tech YouTube channels. Linus Tech Tips with over 15 million subscribers, and Hibbert Home Tech with over 200,000. They clicked on a link which ran a script on their computers, stealing all the cookies for the open web pages, allowing the hackers crucial access to things like their YouTube channels, completely bypassing two-factor authentication. The end goal in that case was to put an interview with Elon Musk on their YouTube channels, which then had a link luring the viewer to a scam cryptocurrency website. And the end result of all of this was that these two creators had their YouTube channels completely deleted. When I clicked on the link, nothing happened, which is always a bad sign. And when I tried to click on it again, Windows at that stage luckily intervened to say they thought the link was malicious, but that could have been too late. I then immediately and luckily was able to change the passwords for my YouTube channel. With a panic though, because I did this on another computer, and because the Wi-Fi at our house has been so bad recently, I couldn't immediately get in. I thought I'd already been hacked. My accounts also need YubiKey authentication. Who knows if the cookie heists have got round this too. But it got me thinking about upping my internet security, and that is where today's sponsor comes in. What is Surfshark? Well, it's a virtual private network that keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all the information I send over the internet. So if I take this underground drainage pipe, if this pipe represents the encrypted tunnel and this gravel the hackers, well, you get the idea. Now, I could mention the fact that with one account you get to protect unlimited number of devices. I've already got it on 2 computers, my phone, and my daughter flew to Greece this morning and is now safe to use airport Wi-Fi. I could mention you can choose to log in from anywhere around the world, which is great for accessing home streaming services when you're abroad, or even from blocking Netflix stuff that you can't access where you live. There's a kill switch which shuts down your internet if the VPN is switched off. But the 2 biggies for us, my wife can now log in safely over free Wi-Fi in, say, a coffee shop. To access her office computer when she's out and about, we use GoToMyPC for that. Remember, free public Wi-Fi is an absolute goldmine for hackers. And after the pain and anxiety of nearly having my YouTube channel taken down, I love the clean web feature that blocks ads, trackers, malware and phishing attempts before they can do any harm. There are so many other things I can mention, and Surfshark is one of the rare VPNs that doesn't monitor or log your web activity, which would kind of defeat the object of having a VPN, wouldn't it? So have a go at protecting yourself today. It's risk-free because there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and with my code Charlie DIYte you get another 3 months for free. You'll find the link in the description below the video, which of course you can access on your smartphone and on your PC in the usual way. Let's talk about my home network problems. I live in an old cottage, and if you don't watch my videos very often, mid-kitchen renovation at the moment, which is why we're in such a mess. But back in 2010, when I bought the place and we moved in, on the advice of a friend in the AV business, I put in a load of Cat5e cables. Here's one around the downstairs of the house and some single modules upstairs as well. I also put 1 coax cable in each box as well, which obviously nowadays is redundant. And all these cables went to a cupboard under the stairs where the phone line came into the house and where the router was positioned. And what a mess this was, because at the time I couldn't afford the matrix switch or something my friend said I needed. So I ended up just terminating every single cable with an RJ45 connector, not best practice as I found out later, more on that in a minute. And I simply plugged each cable into this very basic Cisco network switch whenever I needed to get internet to one of these sockets. And a few years later, on the advice of somebody I was working with, I installed 2 Unifi access points, 1 downstairs, 1 upstairs. Not particularly good placement, as it turns out. Again, I'll come on to that in a bit. And actually I recently moved one of them, which was in this room here, into our lounge, which is now boarded off to stop dust from this room getting into the rest of the house. Now I'll come on to how you configure Unifi access points. It really isn't as difficult as you might be led to believe. But the point was, I got it all up and running and it kind of worked. So I just thought, I'll leave it how it is. Brilliant. With the default settings that come out of the box. But with the Starlink in and looking at those speeds that Starlink was achieving, I realized just how poor my home Wi-Fi connectivity was once the Starlink was feeding into it. And I realized I needed to sort it out. So I've got Unifi access points, but what are your other options? Well, back in the day, you'd plug a range extender into one of your electrical sockets. These were not a perfect solution though. The speed was never as good as that coming out of the router. You're creating a second network, so your phone would typically drop as it left your router Wi-Fi and join that one. And you have issues with power surges, the signal not going through second consumer units, all that sort of stuff. But today in 2023, you've got some pretty funky options out there. Great if, unlike me, you can't get wires to those extenders. And I was only made aware of this, again, through some brilliant comments after my Starlink video. You've got what they're calling the next generation Wi-Fi 6 whole home Wi-Fi systems, which typically come with a router and 1 or more as required additional units or nodes which interconnect with the router and each other in a mesh for complete superfast home Wi-Fi, which is different from your typical router, where the signal only emanates from one source. And when it's doing that, you can get dead spots around the house. With a mesh system where all of the nodes are interconnected, you're much less likely to get those dead spots. Massive thanks to Trevor and Code Green for telling me about their TP-Link Deco PX50. That's a router and 2 additional extenders for £239. And the AXE5400 higher spec with the router and just 1 extender for £249. And Topper45 loves his Netgear Orbi system, where he's got a hub and 3 satellite extenders. For the hub and 2 extenders, it's £729 at the higher end of those that I've seen. There are clearly lots of other players in the market. And let's not forget that Starlink also do additional mesh extenders at £143 a pop, priced somewhere in between those 2 options I've just mentioned. Now, I suspect the beauty of these Wi-Fi 6 mesh options is they're very much plug and play, easy to set up and require minimal configuration, unlike my Unifi. But I don't want to put you off Unifi, so let's go back to my setup and I can explain how it works. So I've got 4 access points in total, 2 AP Lites and 2 AP Pros. There's obviously a difference in size, but apparently in a domestic setting there's not a great deal of difference in power. The main difference you'll find is the Lite just has one socket inside to connect the cable to. Remember, these are a wired solution, so you have to wire them back to your router, whereas the Pro has an additional RJ45 slot, which is handy if you want to plug a computer or something into the room where you've got this particular dish. All mine came with power over Ethernet injectors, which are these little things here. The Lite has this smaller one and the Pro has this larger one. Weirdly, with the Pro, it tells you that it's included in the box, whereas the Lite, it doesn't. But every time I bought a Lite, this little thing comes with it, just something to be aware of. What happens is you plug your router into the LAN slot and your access point goes into the PoE slot. And that's it, you're set up. I should point out the point of the injector is to provide power to the access point. This does not need to be plugged into an electrical socket. However, in spite of the fact that most of the access points seem to come with these, you don't actually need one. And in fact, it's better if you buy a switch that has power over Ethernet incorporated, so you don't end up with this big array of injectors on the wall in your electrical cupboard like I had. Price-wise, the Pro is about 130 quid or £20 more if you want to go with the Wi-Fi 6 version. I didn't even know they did that. And the Lite, £117 for the Wi-Fi 6 or under £100 for this, the older version. So price-wise, these things are pretty reasonable. And unlike the mesh versions, you can plug them into your old router. The big benefit of Unifi, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that it's more configurable than the mesh versions. For example, you can set up guest networks if you've got friends over and you don't want them to have access to your Wi-Fi password. You can turn the LED off on the front of the AP and lots of other things besides. But I'm not going to go into too much detail on those options today, other than to show you how I fix my system shortly. Now, in terms of setting up these access points, you've got 3 hosting options. Number 1, the one I've got, is the software-based version, which you simply download from the Unifi website. Second option is a dedicated on-site device that you buy, one of these Unifi Cloud keys. The main benefit of this over my network solution is it's always on, whereas with the network one, obviously you've got to log on every time you want to see what's going on. There might be another benefit as well, which I'll come on to in a bit. And thirdly, if you don't want any of that hassle of doing it yourself, you can get someone to set you up on their cloud server. And with that, you'll get an app on your phone which enables you to configure and keep an eye on what's going on with your system. To set up network application, you simply download the software. And when you're set up, you double click on this Unifi icon. It prompts you to launch a browser to manage the network. I've set up 2-factor authentication, so in goes my 6-digit key, and then you're onto your dashboard. You make sure your new access points are connected to your router, possibly via a switch if you haven't got enough RJ45 ports on the back of your router, and then they pop up on your dashboard like this. And all you've got to do then is click the Adopt button. Once adopted, you can give them a new name by clicking on Devices, selecting the one you want to change, and then rename it in the Settings tab. And then there are loads of ways you can configure the power outputs and the channels, which I'll come on to in a second. But basically at this point, you're pretty much good to go, and you've got a seamless home Wi-Fi network, which won't drop as you move around with your phone between one access point and the next. But given all of this, why did I have these slow speeds I told you about in Starlink video number 1 and today? Well, again, thank you everyone for wading in with your comments and thoughts on this after my last vid. One of the guys on my Discord forum, which you get access to if you support me on Patreon, suggested that the hardware in Unifi systems is not as good as things like Aruba. But Villan, a network installer, has put me to rights on that. And he said that the Aruba system shouldn't be any better than Unifi. Jake pointed out that as the Starlink Ethernet port's 1 GB, so should all the devices plugged into it. Brian made the same point, and you know what? They're spot on. The Cisco switch I was using is rated up to only 100 megabits per second, although my PC network card is at least good for up to 1 gigabit. So if that was a good start, the next thing that happened properly bludgeoned my Wi-Fi network back into action. Ben, one of my patrons who specialises in office telephony, kindly gave up his day off to come and help me fix my Wi-Fi. Now, I mentioned I had a load of Cat5e cables terminated with these RJ45 connectors, which were then plugged straight into the switch or the router. Now, this is not best practice, particularly given that a solid cable like this is good for long Cat5e runs, but RJ45 connectors like this are really designed for the stranded cable. A solid cable like this is actually designed to be terminated in a socket box and a patch panel. Ben kindly brought this XL panel up with him and set about properly terminating the cables into the panel. Ben's even terminating my garage SWA Cat5e properly, which is up to now just had an RJ45 stock on the end of it. Now again, this patch panel is really designed to be housed in a network cabinet. And as you can see, I don't really have the space in this cupboard for a cabinet, even one of the low profile ones I've just found on the internet the other day. So we came up with a bit of a mod. I made 2 wooden brackets for the panel to screw into. And there you have it, a fantastic workaround. You also gave me this 1 gigabit network switch and tidied up my cables with these Velcro ties. Now, whilst wiring up the patch panel, Ben was telling me that one of the most common causes of connectivity problems is badly terminated cables. And sure enough, when we were up and running, we had that telltale orange light. Now, I've learned this can mean a lot of things, from a connection being made to a connection being sub-speed due to bad wiring. And in the case of my TV, it's because the connection is only 10/100 rather than 1 gigabit. Now, the general rule is that the colours need to be in the same order at both ends of the cable. Sounds pretty obvious, but it's not always the case, depending on what you're connecting up. And with all my cables, they've been terminated to the T568B code. Orange and white, orange, green and white, blue, blue and white, green, brown and white, and brown. As you can see, Ben's done here on the back of the patch panel. Now, on the upstairs corridor access point, I'd clearly got something wrong. Easy to do when you're making up your own cables, because you have to push the individual wires in the right order into the RJ45 before crimping it in place using this tool. Ben redid the connection and suddenly we've got a green light signifying 1 gigabit speed. And it didn't end there. After Ben had gone, and armed with what I'd learned from him, I realised there was another orange light, this time from my work PC, which remember should be 1 gigabit speed. And so I bought this testing kit on Amazon to try and get to the bottom of the problem. And sure enough, another module had been badly wired up by me. Although with this module with no number sequencing on it, you can sort of understand how I got it wrong. And this is the computer I use to upload all my YouTube videos, so that is a bit of a disaster. So as I couldn't understand this wiring, I swapped one of the vacant modules from downstairs. And with all the lights flashing sequentially in the right order, the tester confirmed my rewiring was correct. I had one more socket to fix below the TV in the lounge. You can see terminal 7 isn't registering on the tester. You guys would have killed me if I'd left it unsheathed like this. So this is the finished job with a new 3-port module and faceplate. And again, the tester confirmed everything's wired correctly. So with the wiring now all sorted, I had one job left to do. Configure the access points, which, don't forget, have been in their default settings ever since I set them up. Ben has suggested I host my network on an IT colleague of his cloud server, but I just wasn't sure I needed to do this yet, particularly given I already had access to that network application. And you guys, as usual, had already given me some really useful pointers. Rob suggested I can reconfigure the access points. Andy had noticed the suboptimal placement of my access points, and he's right, of course, because the access points should be on the ceiling for maximum coverage rather than on the wall quite low down where they are at the moment. He also said that I should be careful they weren't set on overlapping bands. And Brian had suggested I alter the power settings on the 5 GHz and 2.4 GHz bands that the access points transmit from. And Ed also referred to this. So I decided to delve into YouTube for help on this, and 2 channels pretty much told me everything I needed to know. Toasty Answers explained in a sort of really simple diagram language I like that it's important that you set your access points on channels that don't overlap, because as you can see from his diagram, if you have, like me, at least 2 access points in your house, there will be overlaps in the range or signal of each. Now, given this overlap, it's important you choose non-overlapping channels at the 2 frequencies that the access points transmit at. 2.4 GHz has 3 overlapping channels, 1, 6 and 11, and the longer range but less powerful 5 GHz has a much wider array of channels. I think it's 8, and then some DFS channels which are used for military and weather radar, which you don't really want to go onto. So applying his logic, you've got 3 non-overlapping channels at 2.4 GHz, and he picked 1, 6 and 11 in his example. And then at the 5 GHz spectrum, where you've got a lot more channels, he's gone for 36, 161 and 48. And these are the DFS channels I was just telling you about. And so I'm pretty sure they were all set to the same channel, which is obviously a bit of a disaster from the point of view of interference. Another thing you have to focus on, which again you guys talked about, is channel width. You've got 3 channels, 20, 40 and 80 megahertz that you can set your access points to. Wider channel widths give you higher performance, but they also gives you more interference and noise and less reliability. So I've set the 2.4 GHz channel to 20 megahertz and the 5 GHz to 40 megahertz on each access point. He also had one other very good point. If you've got 4 access points like I have and only 3 non-overlapping channels on the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, you want to find the 2 access points that are furthest away from each other and put those on the same channel to avoid interference. So that's exactly what I've done with the garage and the shed at the bottom of the garden. So here's a summary of the setting changes I've made. Notice no overlapping channels apart from the garage and the garden on the 2.4 gigahertz radio, and I've set the garden to low power to minimize interference and because it's pretty irrelevant and little used. Now it seems to me you can use the channel width and power settings to make sure that the access points are reaching the right devices, and you can see what devices they're connected to in this screen here. And then you can alter those settings to tailor what devices are attached to each access point and therefore optimize its performance. And there's also a rather brilliant insights tool when you can scan the channels on your network to make sure the access points are running on the least congested channels. The other brilliant YouTube channel that I found was Mac Telecom Networks, and I'll post a link to that and the other channel in the description below this video, but he shows you how you can use the Wi-Fi Man app as well to walk around your house mapping the Wi-Fi signal to work out exactly where you need to place those access points. So as ever, let me know anything you think I've missed. I've certainly noticed a massive improvement in my Wi-Fi network since I made these changes. And now you can see I've got a Wi-Fi experience of 98%. And when the kitchen redevelopment's finished, I'll be moving the access points to the best positions in the house and obviously relocating them on the ceiling. There's one oddity I don't quite understand though. I've switched off wireless meshing in the global settings because I want the access points to rely on their Ethernet connection, not from a meshed signal from one of the other access points. But even though I've done that, it seems to show that they're linking to each other still. And I've even tried to switch on meshing and then physically switch it off on each device with exactly the same result. And if you look in the topology menu, it shows you the map of all the access points and the devices that are connected to them. It's also a complete mess. I've seen comments online to this effect as well, and I suspect you'd fix all of this perhaps if you had it on a more sophisticated cloud-based server or perhaps one of those physical keys that you have in your own home. But again, let me know in the comments if you've encountered this and how to fix it, because I'm intrigued to know what's going on here. So that's it for today. I'm sorry this has been a bit of a long video. I hope you found it useful. And if you're a network installer, don't be too critical of some of the layman's stuff that I've thrown in today. I'm just trying to educate us DIYers on how to better understand our own systems. This video has been an absolute killer. I'm going to crawl under a stone for the rest of the week, or perhaps go and do some more work on the kitchen redevelopment that I haven't been able to do whilst I've been preparing this video. Got some gutters that need fixing actually. Also, I've noticed that I think there's something wrong with my camera lens. I can't get it off. So lots of things to sort out. I couldn't end today's video without another quick mention to Ben, who I'm so grateful for giving up his day. I simply can't thank him enough. He didn't want to be videoed during the day. He's that modest. But before you go today, Ben, I just wanted to get you on the camera so that your boys can see you on one of my videos. That's all right. And yeah, just massive thanks for everything you've done today. I mean, look at this system. Isn't it fantastic? Any words to leave us with?
Well, just hope you can enjoy some super fast broadband, really.
Yeah, and quicker it most certainly is. Thanks again for watching today. Links to everything I've talked about will be in the description, which you can access below the vid by clicking in the usual places. And if you're new to my channel, it would mean so much to me to have you subscribe. You can do that by clicking on the link here, more or less where that little patch is. And don't forget to click the bell notification icon so you get notified of all my future uploads. See you soon.